Well, it's almost 3 minutes after the hour. And so I'm going to, I think we should probably try to get started now, and hopefully a few more folks will join in as we go. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Harry Hockheiser. I am an associate professor of biomedical informatics from the University of Pittsburgh, where I also direct the Biomedical Informatics training program, which is what we're here to talk about today. I'm going to ask my colleagues and friends to go around and introduce themselves, and then we will talk a little bit about our field and get into some details here. So, folks, Cindy, you want to introduce yourself since you're first on my screen?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, I'm Professor Brandt, and I'm at Yale University, and I have two of my other faculty in biomedical informatics, Sarika, who says her name says Robin Einbinder, and Kay Chung, who are part of our crew. I just thought I'd invite them. Nice to meet you.
All right, Larry.
Sorry, muted.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Larry Hunter. I'm from the University of Colorado School of Medicine. I'm the director of the Biomedical Informatics training program here in Colorado.
Niels.
Hey everyone, I'm Niels Gelmborg. I'm an associate professor of biomedical informatics at Harvard Medical School, where I also direct the biomedical informatics and data science research training program, as well as the Master in Biomedical Informatics program. And I'm very excited to tell you more about biomedical informatics and the opportunities that it offers to you.
And Peter, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Peter Elkin. I'm the chair of the Department of Biomedical Informatics at the University of Buffalo, and I direct our T15 training program for both doctoral students and postdocs. And we're all, I'm sure, very excited to be here to tell you about why biomedical informatics is a great field, and that your students would have tremendous opportunities and a great career if they were to come to any of our programs.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. So we're going to go through this talk and tell you a little bit about the field, as I said, and about some of the research that's going on. And we're going to sort of do a round robin on the slides that we have prepared. But I'll encourage anybody who has any questions to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll try to monitor. And we'll try to answer questions as we go. But we'd like to try to be a little bit interactive and have some dialogue here. So please jump in. So the first thing to note here is really that we're at this great time. I think there was somebody who wrote a golden age of paper about this, saying it was a golden age of biomedical informatics. But really, there's so much going on here these days with computing and medicine that even 15 years ago would have seemed unrealistic or unimaginable. And so we have all of these efforts where people are doing new forms of artificial intelligence in medicine, whether it's imaging. We have here with this picture of Mass General Hospital, and applications in things like gastroenterology. We have challenges of putting together diverse data and stitching them together from multiple places to give us more rich and detailed patients and patients in their trajectory. We have the use of electronic data to help with really pressing problems such as opioid use and use and abuse. And of course, we have in the past year and a half really seen some amazing efforts on taking electronic medical record data and using it to understand the COVID pandemic and what's that's meant for patient health. And all of these things involve the challenge of taking large amounts of data, applying advanced techniques, and interpreting them in the context of what goes on with patients to really try to improve care and to improve our knowledge of what it means to provide care and to use computers to help with that. And so this is the world that we all live and breathe and work in every day. And this is what we are hoping to convince people is an interesting place to go, because we frankly need the help. And this slide is for Peter.
So here is, thank you for the cue, by the way. I've actually had the opportunity to go down to Cupertino and work with Apple who has a really good vision for what they're trying to do. And you can see not only with mobile technologies, but some of the other public health models, especially during the pandemic, where there's a real need for biomedical informatics to help ensure unbiased and strongly accurate data models are produced. These data models are starting to become FDA approved in the practice of medicine. And at least I predict that our EHRs will have 10,000 models within the next 10 years that have been approved by the FDA. And so it's really a way to make a big impact on healthcare.
Peter?
Oh, it's still me. Okay. Yep. Just tell me when I'm off. I'm sorry. So bias is clearly a big concern. If you're not using unbiased populations that are the same demographics that you'll be using the software on after the models are trained, then you're creating biased models. We saw this in the model that is FDA approved to look at patients who have diabetic retinopathy, which was trained in Scandinavia and did not have a large Black population, and it started to fail when it got into practice. We need to avoid this kind of biased training of our models, and we need to serve our society well. Next slide, please. Tell me when I'm off, would you, Harry? But informatics can help address these disparities. It's really helpful to put into place methods that are driving toward equitable care in our society. We are in the process in the CTSA consortium of trying to put together a working group to try to use artificial intelligence to try to help with recruitment of minorities and underrepresented persons to clinical trials. And I think that in every aspect of health and research, we need to be thinking about the way that we serve our communities the way they really exist. Next slide, please. And this and
Niels is up now.
Oh, Niels is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. You could have, of course, kept on going. I'm sure you would have done a wonderful job giving an overview of career opportunities. But it's my pleasure to give you just a little bit of an insight into where you can find careers in biomedical informatics. And you can see here there are four major areas. So there's clearly research, which happens a lot in academia and so research institutions, mostly nonprofits. Where the focus is on development of new methodologies, really pushing sort of the boundary of knowledge in life sciences and medicine, and solving major problems, and sort of leading the way for other fields, such as healthcare, industry, or government. In healthcare, a lot of biomedical informatics careers are based in major medical centers, often academic medical centers, of course, but also in other settings, such as community healthcare, or development of medical instruments and devices. Imaging is a major sector that needs a lot of expertise in data processing and data analysis. So this ranges from pathology applications all the way to MRI, CT data. So those companies that produce these kind of devices and tools to interpret this information need a lot of people with skills in data science and informatics. But there are also very exciting careers in the insurance industry and public health. And in particular today, I think public health really is in the spotlight in terms of the amounts of data that are available, but also need to be processed and interpreted. Industry clearly has roles for people with training in biomedical informatics and data science as well. The focus in industry tends to be often on product development, which you see more in tech companies. Companies develop tools to interpret mobile health data, smartphone data, or other sensor data from, say, Fitbits, smartwatches, et cetera. But there's also a lot of R&D happening in drug companies, companies that develop vaccines, for example, right? And there are many other types of roles in industry where training in biomedical informatics is incredibly valuable and desired. And finally, there's, of course, also the government sector that has a lot of career opportunities. the National Institutes of Health. One major example, they do both research in-house essentially, but also management of research and funding of research outside of the National Institutes of Health. Centers for Disease Control, CDC, the FDA has many possible careers, as well as the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and other government agencies will be looking for people who have an understanding of biomedical data, know how to handle and analyze it. So on the next slide, if you could move on, just a couple of thoughts on why this is worth pursuing and what kind of opportunities a career in biomedical informatics offers to you. So I think there are, and I completely agree with the statement, it is an incredibly flexible career. Right? So with the training that you receive in biomedical informatics, you can take the role of a computer scientist if you want, and you can build systems, you can write software. But of course, there's a lot of AI, machine learning for data analysis, along with sort of more traditional statistical methods, algorithms, and development of these methods, or adapting existing methods to biomedical problems. So you can work on those kind of problems if you're interested in that. On the other hand, with the training that you would receive in biology and medicine, you can really ask questions and solve problems in those spaces, right? So you can do biology research, you can do research in medical applications, healthcare systems, really looking at the bigger picture, as well as public health, as already mentioned. And of course, with skills in sort of systems analysis, understanding implementation, and really learning how to solve problems with data. That is a incredibly valuable skill set that you can apply clearly in all the different sectors that I mentioned earlier, but also theoretically in other industries and other fields. And as maybe goes without saying, with a graduate degree, you will have plenty of opportunities to practice your writing skills, public speaking, and project management, as well as implementation of your projects. Something else that is incredibly exciting about biomedical informatics is really the focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and being able to apply these techniques, which are really all over the place, but applying those to complex, often messy data sets, which is really the real world, and being able to get to results that can really impact people's lives and impact people's health. Finally, or not quite finally, this field, working in biology and medicine, and being able to manage data and handle data is a very prestigious role, and has, certainly, would look good on your CV in any case, and it also pays well. That's something not to forget. The field is growing rapidly. There is extremely high demand for people with the skill sets, of finding jobs is fairly straightforward. And graduate training programs in this field, pay a stipend, will provide insurance of all sorts while you're enrolled in these programs. And now finally, right, this is a field in which you can really make a difference in people's lives. And I want to move on to the next slide, where I want to point out a resource that you might be interested in if you want to sort of hear firsthand from 16 different graduates of the biomedical informatics training programs that the National Library of Medicine is currently funding. So we have this video project where people tell their story about how they got into biomedical informatics, what their careers looked like after their training, and how they made an impact in people's lives, including actually in animals' lives. So there's one example where someone with a background in veterinary medicine who is an informatician and is working on EHRs for animals. So check out
2 hours from Pittsburgh, I think.
Yes. So check out connections.careers. And these videos are only about 3 minutes long. They're very entertaining, very easy to watch, and maybe they'll inspire you to see, how you can fit in to this field, because people really come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And that website and that project really demonstrates and illustrates this very nicely.
Well, hopefully you all know what biomedical informatics is, but for those of you who joined this and didn't really know why you're joining this call, it's the interdisciplinary field that studies and pursues the effective use of biomedical data, information, and knowledge for scientific inquiry, problem solving, and decision making, and it's motivated primarily by efforts to improve human health. Now, biomedical informatics is a core scientific discipline that supports applied research and practice down below on the bottom here, where you see several disciplines such as bioinformatics, clinical informatics, health informatics, and public health informatics, and a lot more that aren't even on this slide. Next slide, please. So biomedical informatics builds upon and contributes to the scientific disciplines of computer science, engineering, biological and physical sciences, mathematical, statistical, and decision sciences, information, computer science, communication sciences, cognitive and social sciences, and humanities. And like I said, it builds upon and contributes to, and we see lots of both PhD students and postdocs from all of these different disciplines. Next slide. And I like the comedy here. So what do biomedical informatics do? So this one is reconnect and control the flood of information and data. It's this gigantic flood on the left. So patients and oopsie, someone did next slide. Oh, well. Oh, so the patients and healthcare scientists and clinicians can make better decisions. And so I don't know, we should update some of this. The slides, the guy in the middle is fixing the pipe. It looks like a plumber. So we're not really plumbers, but we do help be that intermediary between the data, information, knowledge, and the clinical side of the world. I'm done. I think Larry's next.
I am. So one of the things that we do is bring molecular data to patients. So there's been a revolution in the molecular biology in the last few decades. And now with relatively inexpensive genome sequencing and a bunch of other molecular techniques, there's far more data about what's going on in your molecules that's relevant to the people who are trying to improve health, to doctors and public health and all kinds of other folks interested in that. And so a big thing that we do is connect that molecular data, genetics and sequencing and all that exciting new stuff to actual patients and to make their lives better, pick better treatments, diagnose rare disease, things like that. Next. One of the things that we do is lots of machine learning. And as Nils pointed out, imaging. So the medical world is full of images, some of which you see here. These are pictures of different kinds of cancer cells. And trying to understand everything that's in those pictures is a very important part of medicine. It's what pathologists do and others. And the modern toolbox for trying to understand what these incredibly important images can tell us involve informatics, involve computer analysis of these images in various kinds. And this is an example in cancer that has really made a difference in the outcomes for these cancer patients. Next. And another thing we do is really directly try to make a difference. So you've probably noticed, if you've been in a doctor's office recently, that there are computers there. And in fact, the doctors often spend an awful lot of time typing into those computers and looking at information, integrating lots of information. And it's up to informaticians, clinical informaticians for the most part, to try and make those systems work for the people who are in them. So work for the patients, work for the providers. There's all kinds of opportunities to take advantage of the information that's available to improve the quality of care, the timeliness of care, reduce the cost of care, all kinds of other things. And this mentions, among other things, rare disease, which is a place that informatics has made a lot of difference recently. I think that's it for me for now.
Yep, thanks, Larry. So public health informatics is one of these things that it's kind of hard to avoid these days with COVID-19 and all, but looking at large scale national or international data sets to try to understand what's going on with public health is also a very active area of work in biomedical informatics. And since the beginning of the pandemic in early 2020, there have been huge numbers of efforts to try to take data from the number of cases, the number of hospitalizations, the number of deaths, and then to build in those along with all sorts of other data sets to see what's going on and how the pandemic trends. And so on the top left here, you can see a map that some of our colleagues in North Carolina put together to very quickly see track the outbreak in their state. On the top right there, you can see some trends about Google searches for different terms. And you can see how they lay out over the course of 2020 and how some specific political events caused changes in those trends. And so it's an interesting way of learning what questions are on people's minds and how they're going about looking at the world that they see. And so using Google as a source of information to understand how people think about health. It's been done in many ways, but it's still an interesting idea. People have applied similar things to looking at social media data as well. On the bottom there, you can see some projections for what might happen in the number of reported cases, hospitalizations, and deaths in the COVID pandemic under different assumptions. So the question that some people have been asking, some people I've been working with, involves if we see different things happening 6 months from now, over the next 6 months, how might that affect the course of the pandemic? And when you work on questions like this, you have the ability to work with people in decision-making roles, like at the CDC, and to help inform them so they can bring the best estimates of the community into bear when they make public health decisions. So that can be pretty exciting when it works out well. So what does it mean to do a doctoral program in biomedical informatics? I'm going to tell you a little bit about this, and then we'll hear from each of the 5 programs represented here in more detail. Obviously, the programs are going to vary. No 2 programs are the same, but some common features. You're going to have some coursework, could be as little as 1 year, might be 2 years, where you learn a lot of the basics, the fundamental aspects of the field. Could be coding and programming. You learn topics like knowledge representation, statistics, machine learning, AI, qualitative research. You learn about biomedical ontologies and vocabularies, and possibly a little bit about what it means to be in the clinical environment. But the real core of what we're going to do is research. And I think most programs will get you started on research in your first year. And then after you're done with the coursework, it really is going to ramp up much more quickly. So hopefully with 2 or 3 years of research with the faculty advisor, or perhaps multiple faculty advisors, you would then be done with your PhD. So usually we think it's 4 to 5 years in total. We like it, at least at Pittsburgh, we like to get people done in less than 5 years. Some places might differ. I always say that if somebody comes in and wants to finish in 4 years and sets out a plan, they will do that. And again, most places, most students will have opportunities to get tuition and stipend covered. So this is not something that people have to fund on their own. And these are just some of the activities you'll get involved with, from writing code to data analysis and modeling and interacting with clinicians, writing papers, presenting, teaching. And one of the things that I know I'm seeing regularly with my trainees is people who shift over time. And I see the people who come in thinking they want to do machine learning, and then they realize, oh, if I want to do this work well, I have to understand what the clinicians want. And all of a sudden they're doing some qualitative research and they're learning those things, and vice versa. And so I think biomedical informatics is a field that is very much about adapting your skill set and taking on new challenges as needed to fit the problem. This is not a good field if you want to be somebody who sits in a corner and does the same thing all the time. But there are plenty of opportunities to do and to learn and do new things. And I am constantly learning myself, and I think that's a great way to be. So let me tell you then a little bit about our program at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm not going to read the mission statement there. You can see it. I'll just tell you a little bit about a couple of these projects that represent just some of the many interesting things my colleagues and I have been working on over the past several years. On the top left, you see something we call the Learning Electronic Medical Record, which is a tool that we designed to learn from physician access patterns and to see, given a bunch of patients, when a doctor looks at or a nurse looks at certain elements in the record, we can capture that information and use it to predict what they might want to see for the next patient. And so here we have a yellow area up top, which represents where the patient, the highlighted information that was predicted to be of interest for that patient might be shown. And we've done some evaluation. We've got some more user studies we're trying to do with this to see if it'll work. On the right, you see a graphical model, which is where somebody took observational data, which is information about what happened with patients, and they combined it with insights extracted from the literature and used a technique known as causal discovery to help find relationships and to use those relationships to identify new uses for medications. On the bottom, you can see some work that a colleague did on looking at bioinformatics data to find protein-protein interactions involved in schizophrenia. So these are just 3 semi-randomly picked projects out of dozens I could have picked that we have going on at our program, and really at any of these programs. There are a comparable number of things. And we all like to brag about our alumni. I've just got a few things listed here from what some of our alumni have gone on to do. But I will tell you, none of our alumni, I've not had anybody come to me and say, hey, I can't find a job, can you help? That just doesn't seem to happen in our field. Larry.
Colorado. So not only is Colorado a wonderful place to live, and we have we're expanding our faculty a lot. So a lot of exciting things are going on in Colorado. But I want to sort of highlight one of our focuses on our students, which is that we often admit people who have a vision of their own about how they want to work on something personally important to them or important to their community, or maybe important to the whole world. And coming in with that strong desire, we give them the training and the support. I like to think of it as rocket fuel to really achieve their goals. And I'm just going to talk about one student, a guy named Ignacio Tripodi, who's graduated a little over a year and a half ago. Ignacio was probably the world's only Argentinian vegan. He really cared about animals and animal rights. And his goal, he was a somewhat later in life graduate student, his goal was to reduce the amount of animals in toxicology testing. And when we test new compounds that are going to be put into fabrics or homes or even potentially new drugs or agricultural chemicals, we have to find out whether they're toxic or not before they're released into the environment. And that is largely done by giving a lot of mice those compounds and seeing how they do. And so Ignacio's goal was to do something about that. And so he came and built a predictive toxicology system that didn't just use machine learning to make a guess about whether the compound would be toxic or not, but to also give the regulators who make these decisions what they needed in terms of mechanisms of action. That's why they weren't using machine learning stuff before. So he more or less solved that problem. And the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States and some of the companies that work for them doing that testing have gotten very excited about this and are using it and have hired him. And he is really genuinely, in a relatively short period of time, making a big difference in how toxicology testing is done in the United States and around the world. And when you come in with a passion, we can help you achieve it.
Cindy?
Well, for those of you who don't want to go to Colorado and be in beautiful skiing country, can come to beautiful Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. We're a pretty diverse faculty centered in the Yale Center for Medical Informatics and computational biology and bioinformatics. We have a longstanding PhD program in computational biology and bioinformatics, and we have a translational informatics track and a data science track. We do not require a GRE for any of our PhD in CBB or any of our master's programs in health informatics or clinical health informatics. Our deadline for application for our PhD program is December 1st, probably similar across most of the PhD programs. At the School of Public Health, our master's programs I think that's December 15th for applications. We have many clinical fellowships, research fellowships, and biomedical informatics fellowships across all of our schools and at the VA, nursing school, and clinical informatics. And all of our fellows work together collaboratively and with a lot of the PhD and the master's students. So we have a very good interaction and group between both bioinformatics, clinical informatics, and we have I think a really strength of our program is our health services and our participatory informatics, health equity, and collaborations with our equity research and innovation center. We have a new consumer health, I can't even say it. Our chill lab, we have a new chill lab, Tarika. What is the name of it
Health
again?
Informatics Lab.
Yes, we have a new lab that Tarika just started, and our information is available here at the bottom if you're interested in coming. We're equidistant between between New York and Boston, and an easy train ride, but I actually don't go either places anymore. So students do both go directions, and our postdocs go both directions. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Peter Elkin. I'm from the University of Buffalo, and we have a broad educational background and a lot of very interesting research going on. I'll talk about the education first. So we have a master's and PhD program. We have postdoctoral fellows in science, and then we have an ACGME accredited postdoctoral fellowship in clinical informatics. And what that means is that the learners, regardless of what program they're in, they get to see people in other disciplines and work in a multidisciplinary collaborative way. And people are very happy. You can see the pictures, everybody's smiling and having fun. I'll highlight one more educational thing, and then I'll go into some of the research that we've been doing that might excite your students. We started a skills building lab, which we called the informatics lab for the analysis of big data. And this has become the standard national curricula for the clinical informatics fellowships, and also anybody who wants to from the T15 programs. And this was held this past year for the first time. We had 214 people participate, got rave reviews for it. It's a Jupyter Notebook-based curriculum that goes over a wide variety of topics, and it gets people that little shot in the arm up to speed before classes start in September. It's usually offered from July and August, and consists of, I think it was around 20 or so, 28, somewhere in there, lectures with workbooks that you can do both synchronously or asynchronously. Some of the interesting things that we've done are in the graphics around the bottom. And you can see some of our graduates and current students getting together. The pictures, some of the pictures were pre-pandemic, some were during, but we were brave. So we worked on a tumor board for the VA that is an asynchronous tumor board that lets people who have cancer get tumor boards to meet about them, even when it's not from the same institution and they can't do it necessarily at the same time, which if you look at it, people who can avail themselves of tumor boards actually have better outcomes. And yet only about 18% or so of cancer patients get a tumor board, because you have to have all the people at the right place at the right time. There's only so many people that can go through it in an hour for lunch. Some of the other interesting research that's going on is we've come up with a new way to make less biased machine learning algorithms, and we did it by encoding the data with ontology, and then using the same methods we train our doctors at. We had the machine learning algorithm kind of go to medical school. We had it learn the literature. We had it learn clinical guidelines. We had it learn drug data. We had it learn, genomic data. We had it learn all kinds of notes and reports and outcomes. And then we took that ensemble machine learning method and we used it to solve a real practical problem, which was opioid overdoses in an opioid using population that's 170,000 New Yorkers. And we were able not only to get better, more accurate results, but as you started to remove data from the data set or inject bad data, it degraded with the pre-formed embeddings much more highly, and degraded much more slowly when we started to inject more bad data than the algorithms trained on the very same data set, but without the pre-trained embeddings. And we set up quality improvement. So the next two little pictures there are quality markers that we give our physicians, and this has led to better quality of health in our region. By giving people scorecards, you can improve the care that they provide. And these are, not only just the regular HEDIS measures, but they also extend to measures that we thought were important. And then we've developed a bunch of new ontologies that are used in science every day, that many of them come out of the University at Buffalo and have a strong data science program. And we would love to have your students apply to our program. We're very excited, and would really look forward to the referrals. And I'm available at elkinp@buffalo.edu. It's up there on the slide. I assume we're going to give you the slides. If anybody wants to contact me personally and ask about any particular situation or the program in general, we'd be really thrilled to talk to you. Thank you.
So I want to tell you a little bit about the programs that Harvard Medical School is offering for training in biomedical informatics. And we do have a pretty broad range of opportunities for students who would like to train. And our PhD program, which is partially funded through the National Library of Medicine and has a number of slots funded through the T15 that we have, is a PhD in bioinformatics and integrative genomics. So the focus here is more on what we also often call computational biology, molecular data. Although the opportunities go far beyond that, as you probably are aware, and as we've just discussed and presented, molecular data, such as genome sequencing, is everywhere today. It's in many clinical settings. So there are also opportunities to work more on problems in that space. So the deadline for this PhD program, which, if you are admitted to this program and you decide to come, you get a stipend, your tuition is covered, and you get decent benefits. The deadline for this program is December 1st. So this is very soon. If you have not considered applying for a PhD program, it might be a little tight. But if you're interested, please look it up and get in touch with us if you feel like you're very late and maybe you still have a chance to submit your application. The other graduate program that we offer is a Master in Biomedical Informatics. That is a program that you can either enroll in if you're just graduating from college and you have an undergraduate degree in, say, computer science or applied math or stats or data science or bioinformatics, if you have such an undergraduate program at your institution. But we also often admit students with backgrounds in other fields such as economics or biomedical engineering, biology, etc. So that program, but also has a postdoctoral track. I'm not sure if this applies to anyone here on the call today, but you can also get a Master in Biomedical Informatics if you already have a PhD or an MD degree. And for that option of the master's program, we also have slots that are funded by the National Library of Medicine as our BERT Fellowship, which is a 2-year program where you enroll in the master's program part-time, but also can do research in parallel to your coursework. And the deadline for that program is January 13th next year. And finally, an option for those of you who maybe are not quite ready to graduate from college, but you want to experience what is it like to do research in biomedical informatics. We have a summer internship program, or Summer Institute in Biomedical Informatics, which has been running for, I think, 15 years, thereabouts. It's very successful. Many graduates from this internship program have gone on to do PhDs at very prestigious institutions. And that is also a paid program with a stipend for the summer. And so we strongly encourage anyone who just wants to try out biomedical informatics to apply and maybe join us for 9 weeks over the summer. As I mentioned, we do have the BERT training program, which is a fellowship program that has options both for PhD students as well as postdoctoral master students. And we really, if you're curious about these programs, check out our website. On our department website, we have a fairly comprehensive educational section on there. I do want to point out some important things here. One, we do not require any GRE scores for any of our programs at this point. We also offer application fee waivers. So if you're considering to apply, please reach out to us and just let us know that you would like an application fee waiver, and we happily grant you one. We also have another info session just about our programs on December 1st. So in that info session, which is an hour, we will really go into depth in like what the master's program is covering, what the courses are, how our capstone project work, et cetera. And I do want to briefly point out, our institution is embedded in a part of Boston. So the Harvard Medical School is in Boston, while the main university is in Cambridge. But Boston has an area called the Longwood Medical Area, which is a very small part of Boston, but it's extremely densely populated with research institutions and provides endless opportunities for collaboration with major hospitals such as Brigham and Women's, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Boston Children's, all of which are sort of research powerhouses on their own. And I think there's something that people often overlook is sort of the environment in which you're training, right? It's not only like you go to the classroom and you study there, but there's stuff happening around you. And Boston has an extremely rich ecosystem for that, as well as Cambridge with its own Kendall Square biotech hub. And so one of our former master's students, Pradeep Mangalath, he came into our master's program with a background in tech. So he had a computer science undergraduate degree and then an MBA, was working in consulting and sort of was fairly tech savvy and had a unfortunately somewhat sad story. His wife was diagnosed with cancer at a fairly young age, and he really wanted to figure out how he could help her and other patients who are suffering from cancer, given his tech background. And so Pradeep joined the master's program. And during the program, he applied for the Harvard Data Science or Data Science for Good, for Social Good internship program. And that internship resulted in him co-founding a company that repurposed drugs for all sorts of diseases. And so this was a really moving and also very impactful story from one of our students that I'm happy to share a link for in the chat if you want to read this yourself. So this just gives you a bit of a sense of the opportunities that you have as someone with training in biomedical informatics, and how you can apply this when you're in an environment that not only has a university, but also sort of an ecosystem around it that allows you to take your training further. So I hope we'll hear from you in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Peter.
So thank you. So if you want to work on computational tools in healthcare and work on research projects for patients that make a difference in people's lives, we're the place for you. If you can make money in the world lots of ways, but this way you can look in the mirror and see a good person who's making a difference in the world and really feel good about what you do to contribute to our society. Not everybody has to be a coder in informatics. You can do it with less technical backgrounds as well. So if you have an interest in health communications, or sometimes how, the public health policy or other kinds of areas, you still are welcome in the field. Most people are self-motivated and work well in teams. And of course, you get out of anything what you put into it. So being willing to work hard is a plus. And if you're interested in working in health and healthcare, and you don't have to necessarily be a clinician. I tell everybody who does informatics that if you're doing informatics, you're caring for patients in your own way, because real, and I'm a physician scientist, and I can tell you that these things that we do in our offices affect millions of patients. And it is a really good feeling to see your work incorporated into the world and making a difference in real people's lives. And so you should think of yourself as caring for patients, even if you're not a direct care physician in this field. Next slide. Is this me or someone else?
Niels.
I think that's me.
Okay, I'll stop.
Thanks, Peter. So short-term training programs and internships, as I just mentioned, Harvard has one of those, but many other institutions offer these as well. So the funding for these can come from a number of different places. Sometimes they're funded through grants, sometimes they're funded through internal funding that universities have available for these programs. And they are often during the summer, which makes it possible for current students to actually enroll in these short-term training programs. And as I already mentioned, these programs are a really excellent opportunity to really, try something out, hands-on, work in a setting that is very similar to the setting that you would experience as a graduate student. And there are real opportunities here for you to add something to your CV that will make your application to a biomedical informatics graduate program much stronger. Not only having this on your CV, but if things go well and you have a successful internship and you have successful short-term training, you would have the opportunity to ask your mentor for a letter of recommendation. And these letters generally carry a lot of weight because this will be someone who you've worked with on a research project. And if they can write to their colleagues for whatever program you're applying to about your skills and your drive and your motivation to do research, that is a really helpful piece in any graduate school application. So that's something to consider. If things go super well, maybe you even get a paper out of your internship. That's another big plus on any grad school application. The NLM funded programs have these training slots, but unfortunately only one more time for next summer. After that, this option will go away and there will be hopefully a replacement for that. Just keep that in mind. If you want to do that, look for opportunities next summer in 2022. Apart from the National Library of Medicine funding, there are also programs funded through the National Science Foundation, the NSF. They have these research experiences for undergraduates, RUs. Some examples are listed here on the slides. I will not read them out to you. You can get a link to the slides. As Harry mentioned in the chat, just leave your email address and we'll send you the slide deck so you can check out these opportunities yourselves. So I strongly encourage you to consider these opportunities if you're not sure if this is the right thing, or if you want to sort of get a head start in your grad school applications and your grad school experience.
So how do you apply? I think do one of these short-term research experiences, or a semester or summer. It's very important, as Neil said. And the summer before, when you're interested, you should definitely identify programs that are either geographically in your interests and have faculty who they're doing work that fit with your research interests. This then gets you, then you can get recommendation letters from previous faculty or research people who've worked with before. And then most programs for the PhD are generally due in early December, like December 1st. And some of the postdoc applications may be less, the timing for some schools are different, but so it's really important to identify which programs you're interested in. And then for our school, for our PhD, we do our interviews we're doing Zoom interviews in January and then in-person interviews in February. So the application letters get out pretty soon. So, but for our postdocs, it's a little different. So that's pretty much it. Next slide.
Well, I think this is me. Is that right?
Is you, yes.
Okay, so how do you write a winning application? I think the key thing here is what your motivation is. What's your personal statement? You should show us a little bit, at least, that you know what you're getting into. But I think what really drives our committee is looking for somebody who really cares passionately about something. What is it that you want to do with this education? And there's a lot of different things you can care passionately about. You can care passionately about the details of the science or the technology, but at least for our applicants, it's often the case that they care passionately about some social issue or making a difference, like Ignacio I talked about before, who really cared about reducing animal testing and toxicology. What you want to do is put voice to that vision as you write for us. And we want to hear from people who know you. So you want to put together a set of recommendation letters from people who are familiar with your skills and your abilities and your motivation and your passion and your interests. It's probably best if those letters, at least one or two of them, come from professors who have taught you in classes, because they understand what it is that we're interested in and are probably best able to write to these admissions committees in language they understand. But it's really okay to also include letters from organizations you've worked with or places that you have some special relationship with that shows us who you are.
So I think this is me again. So where not to focus in your application, although your grades demonstrate your performance, coursework is less important in graduate school, and many programs also don't require GREs. In fact, our school won't even let you submit it as an optional. Some programs will typically waive the application fees as well, so you should definitely ask when you are applying.
Okay, I get to wrap things up. So you just heard from 5 programs. There are a total of 15 or so that have participated in this series of webinars. This is the third and last one. You can see all the other programs here. I know, and we all know people who run each of these programs. You couldn't go wrong at any one of these programs. They're all filled with great people doing really interesting work, and I encourage you, if you're at all interested, to look them all up. The URLs are here. If you see on the lower right, there's a QR code and a link. And as I said, I'll share the slides, but if you go to that link, you can fill out an interest form and say which schools you are interested in hearing about. And we will get in touch with you. And we're always happy to answer questions. So we've got a few minutes now. If anybody has any questions they want to ask, we are at your service and happy to discuss. So please, feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat, raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with. I know for some of it's 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon here. So if you're feeling it's the end of the week, that's fine too.
Harry, there's a question in the chat about making the video recording available to you. Can you describe that?
Yeah, that's not something I was necessarily planning on doing, although I could probably try to arrange it. One of the things that we don't do all that much of is video editing. And so I'm not very good at it, but let me see what I can do. And I will, I can work on that. But yes, I will definitely get the slides out to everybody's expressed interest. And again, I think the best thing to do is to look at our websites and get in touch directly, because I know it's hard to come up with the questions in real time, but
there's a hand raised.
Oh, there is a hand raised.
Chen.
Hi,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh,
Please,
sorry. Oh, thank you for giving us the presentation. I'm just curious to know how often or how likely students get to be close to the clinical side or the clinical workflow when they study biomedical informatics. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
No need to be nervous. That's a great question, actually. Anybody care to answer that? I've got my own thoughts, but I'll let.
Well, Peter's about to jump in. I think it varies a little
Peter.
bit from program to program, but you do have opportunities. Peter, why don't you talk about them?
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea that you do it. I mean, for me, I'm a clinician, so I take people who are not physicians on rounds in the hospital, We also have rotations with the clinical informatics fellows who sit in the C-suites of the hospitals and work on implementation of EMRs and other systems that the health system is implementing and has implemented, and updates for it, including clinical decision support. So I think in general in the field, there's ripe opportunity for people to get involved on the clinical side who are interested in that, and also to translate your science. So if you're a basic science person doing molecular work with Larry, and you need to get that into the practice to make a difference, most of our departments are situated in such a way that we can help make that happen. So we think we can support your career not only at the beginning, but even for your next transition after you finish our programs.
Does anybody else care to answer that? Opine on that question? I mean, I'll just say that it really depends upon the project and the student and the interest, but some of our best work and most interesting stuff gets done when we get into the hospital or the clinic and we see what's going on. And particularly when it's involving clinical decision support systems, these are things when it's really vital to be working with the clinicians because they have the best problems.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, because I study CS, so I know I will not be able to ask a good question if I'm not familiar with the clinical workflow. But because I don't have any kind of clinical training, so I was worried that people would just get banned from even entering the hospital.
No, we will welcome you. There are plenty of computer scientists wandering around in hospitals these days.
And actually, sometimes not knowing the work can be an asset because it gives you a chance to look at things from fresh eyes, and there's a lot to learn. So when you don't know, you ask the questions.
Got it.
We're down to the last minute, but there's one more question in the chat that I want to get to, which is about planning for applications and shortlisting programs. And the question is whether we recommend reaching out to potential PhD mentors before applying. And I would say that's really sort of up to you. It can be illuminating to talk to potential mentors. It's not by any means required in most programs. And it's often the case that the first year of the program is set up to expose you to many possible mentors so that you can make your choices from a position of knowledge. And so you don't have to choose or even have an inclination that way before you get started. I think all of the programs are designed to help you make that choice early in your graduate training. So definitely optional if you want, but not required.
Yep. And
Ignacio's got a question too.
A hand raised, exactly. Yes, please, Ignacio, go ahead.
Well, thank you for the great talk and your time. I was wondering, how are current opportunities for foreign students to take part in your programs?
Yeah, it's challenging. So the T15 grants that we've been talking about, those fellowships are restricted to US citizens and permanent residents. But I'm pretty sure all of the programs, and certainly speaking for Colorado, we take international students into our programs, and they get the same tuition remission and stipends and insurance and support as everybody else.
Ooh, okay. All right. Well, it is 5 o'clock now. You're on the East Coast now, and I think it's a good time to call this to an end. So I have some emails in the chat to send some slides, so I will do that. I'll see what I can do about making the talk available, and I want to thank my colleagues and thank everybody else for attending.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
Looking forward to working forward to nice applications. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.